Hello scientists, I'm Ezegius Wolf. Welcome back to the gaming facility. So, with the release of Abiotic Factor on both Xbox and PlayStation in the coming month, on the 22nd of July, which is about 2 weeks from the time of me recording this, I've decided to go back and start a completely brand new world. And run through some of the starting things that I do when I am first creating a world, as well as the things that I do when I first get into a world, just in the interest of giving new players to the game a little bit of exposure to some simple things that you can miss, or some key mechanics that you might not understand, just to make your life a little bit easier. Also, it's been a while since I've recorded a video. This is due to the fact that I work and study full-time. I'm doing a postgrad at university, so I don't have a huge amount of time for video games at the moment, but yeah, I still wanted to jump on and do a bit of an early start, let's play kind of deal. And where I'm going to start is actually by modifying the game settings. Now, I would recommend, if it's your first time playing, to leave the majority, if not all of these alone, and just to experience the game the way that it is intended. The only thing that I'm going to change, and this is a personal preference, is I'm actually going to disable the research mini games. All this gets you to do is to select the correct component for unlocking a new recipe, which is fine to begin with, I guess. I find it a little bit monotonous, and so I turn it off because I don't enjoy that part of the game, and it may be something that you don't enjoy either. So if you want to turn that off, here's where you come and turn it off. And also, if you're running into the mini game and you watch the video and you see that I didn't, this is why. Because I've ticked this, which has turned off those mini games. There are a bunch of other settings here that, make the game easier or harder. There's also a bunch of settings for accessibility. I'll let you go and view all of those yourself. But with that minor change, we'll see that I am playing single player only, so my gear and my builds are geared towards that in mind. Aside from that, let's jump into it. So the first thing that we're going to run into is the job system. Now, the job system basically just goes through and gives you starting job, which gives you a bunch of skills pre-done. To be honest, most of these, the first couple of levels, are pretty easy to get. And if you're playing on solo, you are going to be doing all of this stuff yourself anyway. So for me personally, I like to take the summer earn turn normally for the starting points, and that just allows me to pick up one or two things in the trait section that I otherwise wouldn't have been able to. So if you've played anything like Project Zomboid or any of those sort of style of games, these lists like positive and negative traits and how this works will be fairly familiar to you. Positive traits cost points, negative traits give you points but have a weakness associated with them, or a perceived weakness associated with them. When I'm playing solo, I will gear myself towards increased playability, as opposed to picking up more stats like +3 damage with all melee weapons or those kinds of things. I'll actually go through and pick up stuff that I otherwise wouldn't be able to get without gear, or I'll pick stuff that'll make the game more playable for me. So what I will go through and do is I'll pick up Wrinkly Brain. That just gives you a flat bonus 20% more XP than normal. And just by having that, I'm offsetting not having picked a class, which the classes you get less points to start off with anyway. So I'll also pick Night Owl because I'm playing by myself. It just means that I don't need to rest as often, because I find that downtime and having to return back to base just a bit of pain in the neck. Next, we have a couple of other things that are going to be really good. So we've got the Hobbyist Chef. So you gain cooking skill twice as fast. This is useful because gaining cooking levels unlocks recipes. And as you unlock recipes, different recipes provide you different buffs as you play the game. So I like to have that unlocked as well. There's a couple of other things that I can take as my last skill. As my last trait. You can take Weathered, which makes it easier for you to withstand temperature changes. There's a temperature gauge, which changes if you're in hotter or cooler areas, that then impacts you in different ways. There is also the agriculture experience gain, which, you know, is up to you whether or not you take it. Agriculture is one of those things where you can scale your farms really easily, and by doing that, you can gain a lot of XP really easily. You can gain 1 or 2 levels really easily by setting up a bunch of farms and setting plants for all those, which I will show possibly in a later video, because I don't want these videos to run for too long. But I am more likely to take thick-skinned, to take Weathered. And Weathered actually leaves me 1 point under. And what I like to do with that is actually take Weak Bladder. Now, Weak Bladder is seen as a negative trait within sort of the game classification. However, with Weak Bladder, you can manipulate the system so that if you don't go to the bathroom, you will, to put it delicately, soil yourself. You can then pick that up using plastic and use that to create more soil, which you can then use to create farms. So it's on here as a negative trait. I don't see it as a negative trait because of the way that I use it, but that's just me. There are some of these other traits that you can take, which things like hearty appetite and dry skin means that you get hungry and thirsty faster. When you're playing solo, these can be quite limiting early on because you'll find yourself always hungry or always thirsty, and that can be a real problem. You can take Slow Healer if you wanted to take another one of these buffs like Thick Skinned. You know, you take Slow Healer so it takes you longer to heal, but you have thicker skin. That's really a personal choice, but I'm not going to overcomplicate things for now. I'm just going to go with these ones that I picked, make it nice and simple. So, yes, we're ready to go, and let's jump in. So, there is something that I like to do in a normal run through. Yeah, hey Thul. So the first thing that I normally like to do is actually level up my sneaking. And the reason, or the great thing about the way this intro is set up is you can set this up, walk away from your computer, and have your sneaking level by itself without you actually having to do anything. Which, you know, if you can build stats without having to worry about doing anything, then that's great. Is this cheesing the stat system? Yes. Do I have a problem with doing that? No. So you'll see in the top left-hand corner, the sneaking XP has popped up. Now, this is where XP for any of your skills or abilities will show up. So this is a good place to sort of start leveling some of our skills. The other thing that I'm going to do is craft some of these mats. Some of these nets, and you would have seen that I would have got a little bit of crafting XP there as well. And you'll see that my sneaking XP is going up. So on PC, I'm pressing K to bring up my skills. I have no idea what the controls are going to be on Xbox or PlayStation. So what I can do is, while I'm just sitting here in proximity to an enemy, my sneaking is going to go up. The other thing that I can do while I'm spending time doing this is just sit here and throw nets. And that's actually going to increase both my XP and both my XP for sneaking and for throwing at the same time. So now, if you decide that you don't want to go down the path of using throwing weapons, then there's not going to be a huge issue or problem with you not leveling it. You're throwing XP. But this is one of those things that if you are going to do it, then this is a way to get through some levels early on. You know, put on a YouTube channel or whatever you like to do to waste a bit of time, or a podcast or whatever, and you can spend a little bit of time to start off with just leveling through some of these. I tend not to play really much on a sneaking or throwing level of things, so you can see I've nearly got a level in both of those just in the time that I've been sitting here talking. But I tend not to use either of those in my playstyle. So, you know, I'm not going to spend a lot more time actually going through and doing this, and I will actually end up I'll end up leveling these as I use them, which is how the skills are designed to be anyway. So with the carbuncle here, just going to chuck the net on it and run up and stomp on it. So, and then we're going to collect that raw carbuncle because we're actually going to be using this fairly early on. The way that I do my startup is a little bit broken, and the game is not designed to... The game doesn't want you to do it this way, but it allows for it to be done. To create some items that you would normally create a little bit later on. We're going to break the sequence of how we do that a little bit, and the game will kind of reward us by giving us limited resources back. So screwdrivers that we pick up, you only ever need one of these, but they are going to be very useful because this is what you use to construct items when you are going through building in the game. Now, just to begin with, you get shown these in yellow. In the future, this isn't going to be highlighted, but the thing to note here is when you dismantle stuff and pick up new items that you've never picked up before, you are going to then also be given recipes in relation to those items. Come on, get you. Now, stomping on those little pests will give you bioscrap, which can be used for a range of things. However, if you actually want to get meat from them that you cook up and use to keep yourself alive, then you're going to want to track down a knife and use a knife to cut up and carve the meat out of the bodies. Got a flashlight now, which will come in handy later on. I like to go through this starting area and pick up all these pressure gauges and stuff just because we're not really going to want to, or we're not really going to circle back here at any stage in the future. So, and by interacting with objects, the desk lamp, you'll often come across like whiteboards that you'll find recipes on and that sort of stuff. And they'll give you new ideas, new recipes, etc. And computer terminals. By going through and reading computer terminals, you'll get new recipes as well. So it's worth investigating all of this stuff. And the lore contained within it is actually pretty interesting as well. So you'll see the office chair here. I can package it by holding down F. And it says 75% chance to break. Now that is based on I believe it's my construction skill. Yeah. So by doing that, so I failed, which broke it down into some common items. Now I did also get a little bit of XP, 12 XP for doing construction. So for deconstructing that. So going through and deconstructing things is a good way sometimes to get resources as well as XP, depending on what you deconstruct. Sometimes you'll actually successfully deconstruct you'll successfully package something that you wanted to deconstruct. That's how it happens sometimes. But a lot of the time, it's a good way to actually go through and get some experience and some items. Let me pick up all this and get the chef's hat. Okay. So let's equip the gloves. Now, we actually had the gloves in our inventory to begin with, which I just didn't equip. Now, the other thing is there'll be a few things that you want to pay attention to within the UI. So, first of all, up here is the sort button. I'm sure they'll actually change that to a button, a context button in the menu for console. The other thing that I want you to pay attention to is this little icon down here, because items that you're carrying in your hopper weigh 25% less. So we can see here that, so what are we seeing? It's actually off the screen. It's not very helpful. Yeah, just trust me that like any heavy items that you're carrying, if you pop them into your hopper, they become a little bit lighter, which is relevant a little bit later on when you are carrying a lot of stuff and a lot of heavy stuff. So it's always worth checking in bins. There's always like different resources floating around and different things that you can use. So sort of check and look at everything. I tend not to pick up the frying pans just because there's one over here already and I can't use any more space. But it's not until I make my own stoves that I really need more. When you get thirsty, you can find sinks around to drink water from. I'm not going to do that at the moment because these take quite a while to refill again. But they're handy to have when you do get thirsty to begin with.
Over here.
So, just going to run over and kill this dude.
You'll need...
Jaeger.
Looks like that little pest damaged the power system. Can you get someone to fix it? But hurry, would you? I'm not enjoying standing around out here. It
So,
was hours last time, and I don't feel safe at all.
so he wants us to repair this. So he wants us to make an energy brick. So what I'm going to do now, though, is I'm going to tie the video off here. So this has just sort of been a quick rundown of the first sort of 5 to 10 minutes. And we're now in like little staff area. Videos normally have a little bit of information about the game world on them, and how certain things work. This sort of explains the power cycle and how some of that works. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to end the video here, and when I do come back, we will look at creating a workbench, creating an energy brick, and a couple of things that we are going to do based around that. So, nice and simple. Till next time, don't forget to be awesome.